the Cocoa Press, the open source chocolate 3D printer made based on a Voron Zero, has finally been released. I was an early backer of this project, and honestly, I have been following Ellie's work, the creator of the Cocoa Press. I've been following her work for many years now, and I am absolutely ecstatic with the final result. It's not perfect. There are the rough edges, but overall, I think that this is a pretty fantastic chocolate 3D printing system with limitations and also a bit of an asterisk on the chocolate, but nonetheless, it delivers pretty fantastic results. Maybe could use some more fine-tuning and work, but overall, I would say it's a fantastic machine, and it's one that's probably the most fun I've had building or using a 3D printer in quite some time. So, let's talk about it. You have, of course, your material, your filament in a sense, which are these chocolate cores. So these chocolate cores are about 70 grams worth of chocolate. They come in 3 variants from the website. You have your milk chocolate, you have your dark chocolate, and you have your white chocolate. Now, when I said earlier that there was an asterisk on the chocolate, these are what are known, from my understanding, to be compound chocolates. They do not actually contain cocoa butter or cacao oil or so forth. They actually have palm oil in them. Now, from what I understand, it is sustainably sourced, and I would take the word of the creator, as I think that she's done a lot of good work in the community, and I doubt that she would do something untoward on this end. But they are compound chocolates with palm oil, which of course some people have either allergies or other issues with palm oil. If that is a problem, I would probably steer away from this 3D printer. You can make your own chocolates, which I did attempt. I did not perform the best, but I have been communicating within the Discord for this printer. There have been people who have made their own chocolate cores. Either they've made molds or they've simply just filled the cartridge inside the system with some melted chocolate. I personally really like the chocolate that comes from this printer. While I have tried all of them, the dark chocolate is by far my favorite. I've always been a dark chocolate fan, but this stuff is pretty incredible. I would say it's like better than most of the chocolate that you'll buy at the grocery store, even better than possibly even some nice, Godiva or whatever. Well, actually, I think Godiva's kind of trash, but either way, it's better than most chocolates that you'll find, and I would even say it's a pretty spectacular blend. The milk chocolate, while I'm not usually a milk chocolate fan, I'm actually pretty happy with. It does have a little bit of sweetness to it that I don't necessarily like that you get with some milk chocolates, as well as the flavor or so forth. Hopefully, if you're watching a video about a chocolate 3D printer, you know a little bit about chocolate and you can tell if you like dark chocolate or milk chocolate. I honestly only have milk chocolate because it came with the printer. If I was only making chocolate for myself, I probably would just be buying dark chocolate. That brings us to the white chocolate. That one I personally do not like very much. It, I think, is lacking in flavor, and I think this could very well be due to the fact that they aren't using cocoa butter, from my understanding, or cacao melts or whatever they're fucking called. I think that they're having to either infuse chocolate into the palm oil, or maybe they're doing a mixture. Either way, I personally do not find the flavor that great, and I probably would only use it maybe as a, let's say if I was going to make some sort of chocolate print that maybe held some like nice preserves or maybe had some other coating on it, I would use the white chocolate, but I don't think it has a strong enough flavor to be a main portion of anything. But either way, the prints are pretty incredible. I have quite a few not amazing prints over here to show you, but that's mainly due to my choice in models to really push the printer and not a lack of ability on the printer side. Now, I will say there is one thing that I have communicated with the community and the creators repeatedly, and it does seem that there is an issue, and I'm not sure where to fix it. This is the remaining of a Serpensky, I think it's called a Serpensky Tower or Serpensky Pyramid, that is printed on the Cocoa Press. And every time I have printed it, there has been this failure at the top. You can see that. I have other videos where it shows it better. Either way, this has been a failure that I cannot seem to fix. And I thought originally maybe it was because the printer was running out of chocolate. I mean, this gets very close to that 70-gram mark. Maybe it's losing pressure or something. And it could still be that it's losing pressure at that point. But from seeing other people in the community attempt to print that model, it seems that nobody has been able to get it to print fully with no issues, at least that I have seen with the versions of the printer that have shipped as of late. It is possible there is a version that somebody has been able to do, maybe with different settings, support settings of some kind. Either way, that does seem to be a limitation, and I have noticed a certain height of print seems to be where you really start to see failures. Now, this could be due to many things. This could be due to the pressure in the cartridge of the printer. This could be due to maybe some Z-wobble in the actual bed system going up and down. This could be due to a lot of different things. I don't want to blame the actual mechanism or the printer until I have fully diagnosed this, but as of right now, I have found that any print that maybe goes beyond like 50 to 60 grams of material really starts to suffer at the very end. Now, the big question, overhangs. Now, I have seen some very good overhangs on this printer. As can be seen in the Cyndaquil model, you can see that the overhangs with the arms and the head all turn out fairly well. Where it really, really, really struggles are those little spikes. This could be due to the limitation of retraction that the printer has. After all, it's pulling a very large column of material back in order to actually have retraction. I'm actually kind of amazed with the level of retraction it does have. If you think about it on a normal 3D printer, it could be pulling, maybe 5-10 grams at the hell. Oh my god, it could easily be half a gram that the printer nozzle is actually having pulled back by the extruder when doing a normal filament retraction. On this, it has to pull the entire 70-gram column. I'm honestly amazed it does retractions at all. But that is a limitation, and that is something that I've seen with my models. With models that have maybe, let's say, a harsh overhang, but it's a single continuous body, it performs very well. I see very good angles, I see good reproduction of those fine details. It does amazing. It is really when you start pushing that retraction where it suffers, but it is still incredible the level of retraction it can have for that limitation, especially given that the main part that actually does the retraction is this plastic plunger. Now the thing is, this plunger is not secured heavily by any means. It is secured simply through a tight fit on a portion inside this cartridge. So they're doing a hell of a retraction with something that's simply a press fit, especially something that easily has to deal with a lot of friction going through the stainless steel cartridge that actually holds the chocolate. So I am really quite impressed by what the printer can do with those limitations. Now, let's talk about where some of the things on the printer, in my opinion, need improvement. One, filament runout. The printer has no mechanism of either stopping collisions. There are end stops and switches or so forth for the actual core XY kinematic system, but the actual extruder itself will run itself into a wall and will just keep pushing and will damage itself. And this is a key thing I think they really need to work on. And I find it especially strange as there are parts of the printer, let's say the inductive probe, that have these systems in it, and yet for some reason these were not included on the actual main extruder system. I think that there could be a lot of work done there, whether there's a calculation of like back pressure or anything at all. Really, I just hate that I feel that the printer will just destroy itself if, let's say, it has 30 grams of filament left and I try to print a 40-gram model. It will just jam that plunger as deep as it possibly can into the cartridge, which is not ideal. You don't want your main stepper motor in there basically constantly skipping. I mean, if you want to talk about damage that's going to wear this thing out, that's the issue that I see. Now, the other thing that I would like to mention regarding the printer, I think it's a fantastic build. They do recommend printing your parts in PETG. I personally didn't want to. I actually printed all of my parts in ABS just because I'm a bit of a Voron head. I was like, well, why would I cheap out or lower the quality that I'm going to put on this? So everything is printed in ABS. I do have a couple parts that curled that I didn't check or didn't catch when I was first setting everything up, so I will reprint one or two parts on here. Even more so, I printed some of the parts out of ASA. Let's say you wanted to use a UV curing light of some kind, or just something to try and kill bacteria that could grow on this, especially in a kitchen setting. I think that there really is room for improvement in some portions of the design for its cleanability. Even the screen cover, I have found I've had chocolate drip on it before, and that's going to be a bit of a pain to clean as time goes on. As far as other things about the printer, the electronics are pretty fantastic. They are limited. It is still running standard Marlin, which isn't an issue, but obviously given the fact that this printer is based on a Voron Zero, I think I would have expected to see a little bit more of new, I guess, developments within the 3D printer community coming around, whether that be an Octoprint, profile, or let's say, I mean, even a Clipper profile of some kind. Now, I did hear that the main reason they stuck with Marlin firmware was the fact that they would have finer temperature control as compared to Clipper, and I think for a system like this, it makes a lot of sense. And also, as far as speed goes, we're not really limited by any means. The actual printer, the print nozzle, you have two options. You either have a 0.8 or a 1.6 millimeter nozzle, and I would say both of them print very fast. No, and especially for the limitation of 70 grams of chocolate, you are rarely, if ever, going to have a print that goes more than an hour. Overall, I would say the electronics package is well put together, and I also think that overall the construction of the printer was very easygoing. I will say, I think that there needs to be some improvement on the instructions. There were multiple errors and things such as possible parts that were eventually updated to a different design that weren't updated in the final build, and that was very confusing to me because I would really have hoped that those things, pretty glaring things that you would notice if you just built one of the printers before sending them out. I'm thinking this could be a difference of by the time LDO motors sent out the kits to them compared to when they finished or maybe updated the designs. I think that there could have been some miscommunication that I wouldn't necessarily put fully on CocoaPress, but there are a couple glaring examples. One of which were certain things that really needed to be specified that were not, such as the inductive probe on these printers is just a little boyo right here. Has 2 screws, and it sits behind the nozzle. So one of the things that was not specified is you need to push that inductive probe as far down as humanly possible, or the print bed will just crash into the nozzle. Luckily, everything is very strong, made of stainless steel, CNC'd, absolutely beautiful finishes, and I think strong enough to withstand most of these forces. But nonetheless, it was very upsetting when I first put my new printer together, my new $1,500 chocolate printer together, to suddenly have it crash into its own nozzle with no issue. And for a long time I didn't even figure out the issue, and I kept just lifting the extruder every time it did Z-probe. So I really think that needs to be fixed in a newer version. Whether it's a newer version of the instructions or something, there needs to be a very large, clear warning that is going to happen if you do not lower the probe as low as humanly possible. Also, another issue, there is no specification in the manual for switching the power supply between an American voltage versus a European voltage, and I think that is another thing very glaring, considering I'm pretty sure most of the kits only were sold in North America. I didn't see anyone outside of North America that had one, so the actual power supply came not at American voltage, and there was no specification for that. I think that was another bit of something where I didn't catch it until later, and it wasn't turning on, and I didn't know what had happened. I think that really needs to be specified. I understand LDO most likely sourced that part, and they may have not known, but that is still a bit of a glaring issue in my view. Other things, the main display and touchscreen that you actually interact with on the printer is based on a Lulzbot touchscreen, which is very cool. I love when I see open source projects from other projects coming into different projects, and you can kind of see like, hey, why do redevelopment when you can just integrate something else? However, and this was an issue that I saw both, you can see on my stream where I built this printer, as well as a relatively huge 3D printing YouTuber who also built one, Nero 3D. There are 2 ports on the back, the same exact port for the display cable to connect to, and both of them, there's no marking on the PCB that I could see. There is no designation of which one to attach to, and my bigger issue is not so much that this is missing from the CocoaPress printer. I could not find this on the Lulzbot documentation, which is rather horrifying to me. Like, that's their PCB. So I thought, oh, maybe CocoaPress just didn't put it. I should go check Lulzbot. And of course, I am possibly in the minority of actually knowing that Lulzbot designed that. And this was listed on the PCB, but once again, that is something that should be specified. If you can plug a cable into the wrong port, tighten everything down, and like have the printer fully built before you even know, that's a problem that needs to be fixed. Beyond that, I would say they did mention this in the Discord, that this was being updated, that they were going to update the exact numbers of different bolts and screws and extras that you would have, because I did have an issue that I lost one, I think it was one either bolt or screw or something. I lost something, and I counted out, and I could tell that I did not have enough to continue. I can't remember which part it was, but there was a key part that I lost and had to just order more. I was left with a pile of screws after building this, and yet for some reason I was given an exact number of bearings down to the single digits or so forth, that I had to actually order more. Another thing about this printer that I would like to add is the actual linear rails that are used. there is nothing that I saw in the manual reminding people or telling people that you cannot allow the carriages to come off the rails or the bearings inside them will fall out. Now, I knew this from being a fan of Vorons and other 3D printers that use linear rails, but as far as I could tell, this was not listed in the documentation, at least in certain portions. And there was a part of the build where the extruder head was not on, which is the only thing stopping the Z-axis from completely sliding off, other than the Z lead screw, which wasn't attached. And there was a part where I had to flip the printer over to do something, and it slid clear off. There was nothing to stop it. There wasn't even anything in the instructions. You couldn't have, like, the way that the screws were attached, you couldn't have even put the stopper in place to stop it. It fully fell off, and I ordered some more carriages to make sure I had enough bearings for proper movement. So these are just some rather, in my opinion, glaring things to not put, especially on a product that is eventually going to supposedly be in a world outside of just 3D printing nerds, and actually in a space where businesses and things will be using them. Now, obviously, those businesses might buy a completely built unit, but still, with maintenance and other issues, I think that this is a clear thing where something needed to be specified, in my opinion, and it was not. But once again, I love the printer, I love the team behind it, and I think they did a really amazing job. So, regarding that little aside earlier on making your own chocolate, I spoke briefly with the team on their Discord regarding the fact that they had mentioned that they were going to release instructions and recipes on how to make your own chocolate, but they had not released them as the time of recording. And from speaking with them, they said they were going to work on that in the new year, which of course it is January 4th as of today. And I have not seen anything thus far from the team, and hopefully they come around to make something that actually helps you, so you can make your own chocolates that actually are properly made for the printer, and a compound chocolate of a similar blend to theirs. Now, what I ended up doing was finding some palm oil at a local specialty grocery store that was, first off, solid at room temperature, so it should print similar to this, as well as looked up some various instructionals on people who had made homemade chocolates and so forth. So what I ended up going with was a 1-to-1 ratio of solid to liquefied palm oil per grammage. So I did, if I was making a 70-gram core, I put 35 grams of palm oil and 35 grams of a half and half mixture of cocoa powder, actually black cocoa powder because I love super dark chocolate, black cocoa powder, and powdered sugar. It was confectionery sugar. There we go. So either way, I made that mixture and ended up putting it through the printer, and I would say the consistency is that of wet cement. It just melts in your finger. It doesn't hold its shape whatsoever. Yet it's like plaster. Tastes good though. Tastes pretty damn good, honestly. Now, tasty plaster aside, I can still see a lot of uses for this. As some people have talked about with their printers, they had planned to put fondant through it, or some other product that they would end up using as a decorative piece to a baked good of something of the kind. And I actually can totally see, if I wanted to make some really cool like biscuit or cookie or some sort of thing with this, which I absolutely could do, putting it through the extruder would be great, especially because it prints directly onto a silicon baking mat. Perfect. Nonetheless, I do really await when they release their recipe for homemade chocolates for this, because in my opinion, just trying to recreate what they had, I did not have much success. To top it off, I attempted to make a different type of sweet. I wanted to make a basically matcha chocolate to print with this printer. Now, I may have done something a little stupid. I did half palm oil, half matcha latte mix. I was going to do the same mixture that I ended up doing for the chocolate that I tried to make, of half confectioner sugar, powdered sugar, and half cocoa or half matcha. But my matcha, just my pure matcha powder that I had, ended up actually going bad while I was trying to do this. So I ended up scrapping that idea totally and ended up trying to make it with the matcha latte mix. And it turned into a horribly thick sludge that couldn't be pushed out of the printer and overloaded the stepper motor, even with a 1.6 millimeter nozzle, which is astonishing. So that didn't work very well, but we move on to bigger and greater things. So with that being said, until the creators do more work on making public recipes that people can make their own chocolate at home, I do recommend buying their chocolate cores that they have on their website. And I think that while they are expensive for sure, they are not as expensive as some people might say. It's $50 for a box of 10 cores, each core being 70 grams. And if we're looking at like that, we got 700 grams of chocolate, $50. Not great, but considering the complex compound chocolate that it is, it's already shaped into cores, it's already pre-prepped that I can just slide it in, it's pre-packaged. If I were, let's say, at an event, at a convention, where we were making cute little chocolate 3D prints to give out to people as prizes or for sale, or maybe they wanted to come and say, I want this specific thing. Having a pre-packaged, clean, food-safe chocolate in a package that could easily be slotted immediately into a clean stainless steel cartridge that requires no hands actually touching the chocolate, in my opinion, are a pretty good deal. But this is coming from somebody who does go to conventions, sell 3D prints, and does plan on eventually possibly selling chocolate 3D prints with this printer. In my opinion, it's a pretty good deal for a product that will ease my use, and I don't have to make my own silicone molds and double boil chocolate and fit it into each mold and hope I get a chocolate that's the right tempering and so on and so forth. So, and possibly I need a special chocolate maker, something of some kind. Either way, in my view, the chocolate cores, while expensive, are a reasonable ease of use buy for me, and I will most likely be buying a lot more dark chocolate cores, even just for myself and my wife. So, to end things off, do I recommend the chocolate 3D printer, the Cocoa Press, for another person? I do, with an asterisk. If you are somebody who already, let's say, has a bunch of 3D printers, loves 3D printing. I am someone who has 3 Bamboo Lab X1 carbons, used to have a Cheedy X Plus, used to use a CR10 V2, used to have the most terrible monoprice 3D printer from like the very beginnings of the Ender 3 era, who now runs even a professional 3D printer such as the Markforged Mark II, has used Formlabs 3D printers, has somebody who does tons of 3D printing and loves 3D printing. I think the Cocoa Press is a really, really fun project. It's an expensive project. I don't think it is ready to be a full workhorse in any way, shape, or form. It has its issues. It doesn't perform perfectly every time. It needs specialty going into how to level it, how to deal with other intricacies of the printer, and the filament is pricey if you're not selling things with it. So for it not to be fully ready off the shelf to be making money off of it, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit of a pricey buy. But if you're somebody who's really into 3D printing and finally wants a printer, and maybe somebody who has made 3D printing into a larger part of their life of making money, where sometimes you can't do the fun things with a 3D printer. You have to focus on, oh, I need to make this for this event, or I have to plan something with this printer. I think for somebody who already loves 3D printing and wants something that kind of brings back that spice of when you first got into it, and even just printing a shitty Benchy was really fun, I think the Cocoa Press is for you. I think the Cocoa Press is for somebody who loves 3D printing and wants to have a little fun. I love my Cocoa Press. I plan to use it a lot. My family loves the Cocoa Press, and I love it. I think it's a great 3D printer. I don't think it's for everyone, but it's for me. I hope you enjoy. Maybe give the wife review of the chocolate 3D of the Cocoa Press.
This bitch delicious. I really like the chocolate. It's real good. Look at it. It wiggles. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Alright, that's enough.